5 boys. Ordinary dreams. One night stole everything. Lies buried truth, and innocence burned. But silence wouldn't last forever. What if one walk in the park destroyed your future? What if laughter with friends became handcuffs overnight? 5 boys. Family shattered. Dignity stripped. Freedom stolen. Their lives twisted by a system built to break them. But history doesn't forget. And soon, truth would claw its way back. Harlem. Late 1980s. 5 boys. 5 different lives. Yusef loved basketball. His dream was college hoops. Corey had a smile that could light up a block. Kevin scribbled rap lyrics in worn notebooks, chasing rhythm and rhyme. Raymond carried quiet strength, always looking out for his younger siblings. And Antron, fast, fierce, destined for baseball glory. They weren't perfect. They skipped homework, teased each other, chased girls down city blocks. But they were kids, ordinary kids. At home, their families pushed for better. Mothers juggling 2 jobs. Fathers hoping their sons would avoid the streets. Dinner tables filled with laughter, lectures, and promises of brighter futures. The boys leaned on each other. Basketball courts, corner stores, late-night jokes on cracked sidewalks. Their bond was survival in a city divided by race and fear. But shadows crept close. Whispers of crime, headlines dripping with panic, police under pressure. New York was boiling, and someone would have to take the fall. The boys didn't know it, but destiny was already circling. Their names weren't written in trophies or diplomas. They were being written into something darker. A story bigger than themselves. Because soon, the city's hunger for justice would collide with their innocence, and 5 ordinary boys would be painted as monsters. It started like any other afternoon. Laughter echoed off brick walls. Basketballs bounced. Music blared from boom boxes. The boys were free, invisible in their city, but freedom shattered in minutes. A jogger screamed in Central Park. Panic ignited. The police arrived, sirens slicing through the hum of the city. Accusations flew before questions were asked. Suddenly, Yusef, Corey, Kevin, Raymond, and Antron were handcuffed. No evidence, no warning, only the weight of injustice. The city demanded a culprit, and these boys were the easiest to blame. The media spun horror. Headlines painted monsters where boys had laughed moments before. Neighbors whispered, friends recoiled, and families trembled. Every lie piled higher, every alibi ignored. Fear gripped them, a cold, paralyzing terror. But in that fear, a spark flickered. They knew they hadn't done this. They knew the truth was theirs alone. Interrogations came, hours that felt like days. Questions twisted, words manipulated, innocence weaponized. Confessions extracted from exhaustion, coercion, and despair. Each boy's spirit bent under the weight of the law. Yet, even in the darkness, defiance whispered. A small, stubborn voice in their hearts refused to vanish. By nightfall, the city believed them guilty. The boys were taken to separate cells, alone with their terror. The headlines roared. The injustice prevailed, for now. But a fight had begun. Not outside, not yet. Inside, where fear met resolve, they lit the first flame of resistance. And soon, that flame would burn far beyond the prison walls. It was an ordinary day in Harlem. Laughter bounced off brick walls. Boys raced down streets, basketballs thumping in rhythm with the city. Music spilled from corner stores, life pulsing through every crack. But ordinary vanished in an instant. A jogger screamed from the park. Panic exploded. Police sirens sliced through the afternoon calm. Accusations flew before a single fact was checked. Yusef, Corey, Kevin, Raymond, and Antron were snatched from their world. Handcuffed, bewildered, terrified. No evidence tied them to the crime. No questions, only assumptions, and a city desperate for justice. The media pounced. Headlines painted monsters where children had played. Neighbors recoiled. Friends whispered. Families trembled. Every lie piled higher, every defense dismissed. Fear gripped them, cold, relentless. But beneath that fear, a spark flickered. They knew the truth. In their hearts, innocence refused to break. Hours stretched into days. Interrogations twisted their words, weaponized their silence. Coerced confessions became headlines. their identities crushed under the weight of authority. Yet, even in despair, defiance whispered. A stubborn flame of resistance ignited inside. By nightfall, the city believed them guilty. The boys were isolated, trapped in the machinery of injustice. The headlines roared, the lies solidified. The system had won, for now, but the fight had begun. Not outside, not yet. Inside, where fear met resolve, the first seeds of rebellion took root. And one day, that seed would grow, threatening to burn through every lie. The city demanded answers. The boys demanded truth. But truth was buried beneath lies, coercion, and fear. Police piled flawed evidence into piles that should have crumbled. Witnesses contradicted themselves, but investigators ignored it. Confessions extracted under duress became the backbone of a prosecution built on suspicion, not fact. Every question asked was a trap. Every hesitation twisted into guilt. Prosecutors smelled victory. Their goal, conviction, not justice. The courtroom became a stage. The boys were actors in a play they hadn't auditioned for. Communities divided. Some saw them as monsters, shaped by fear and headlines. Others whispered doubt, but voices were drowned in outrage. Families were attacked, neighborhoods polarized. Inside, despair gnawed at the boys. They were isolated, branded, and silenced. But beneath despair, a stubborn ember burned. They refused to let the world define them. They refused to surrender entirely. The media fed the frenzy. Every article, every broadcast, painted them guilty before trial. The city watched, horrified, convinced of their monstrosity. Yet one detail, small, overlooked, lingered quietly in the shadows. One piece of evidence would later challenge everything they had been forced to say. One witness overlooked. One timeline misread. Even as the boys faced mounting despair, resolve hardened. They clung to memory, friendship, and the truth that no amount of coercion could erase. Every insult, every accusation, only strengthened their quiet defiance. The villains thought the story was theirs to write. They thought the boys' voices would vanish under authority's rule. But truth has a way of creeping through cracks. It cannot stay buried forever. The investigation ended, or so the city believed. Convictions loomed, but the seeds of revelation had been planted. And one day, the world would learn the story the boys had tried to tell all along. The courtroom was cold. Wooden benches, glaring lights, and faces that judged before words were spoken. The boys entered, handcuffed, carrying innocence like armor. Prosecutors spoke with venom, painting monsters where children had played. Defense arguments drowned in authority's roar. Contradictions were ignored. Witnesses wavered, but the judge moved on. Families sat, hearts and throats, praying the system could see truth. Mothers whispered encouragement through tears. Fathers clenched fists, silent fury burning. The community outside split, some demanding justice, others demanding punishment. The boys were crushed, exhaustion and despair etched deep into their faces. Yet inside, their spirits refused to break. Every glance between them was a silent vow: survival, truth, resilience. The prosecution's case seemed unassailable. Every word, every exhibit, reinforced a narrative they did not create. It felt like defeat. It felt like the system had finally won. Then came the testimony that shook the room. A detail small, almost insignificant, but impossible to ignore. It hinted at gaps, contradictions, lies buried in plain sight. A flicker of doubt pierced the courtroom's suffocating certainty. For the first time, cracks appeared in the armor of corruption. The boys might still be crushed, but the seeds of justice had been planted. The villains believed victory was theirs, but one whispered truth threatened to unravel everything. The trial pressed on. The outcome seemed inevitable. Yet somewhere, in those small, overlooked details, the fight for truth quietly stirred. The verdict echoed through the courtroom like a hammer. Guilty. 5 boys. Innocent. Branded as criminals. The gavel slammed. Final. Unforgiving. Families wept openly. Mothers clutched each other. Fathers' hands shook, white-knuckled, against despair. The community trembled, shocked into silence. The boys felt their world collapse. Fear, humiliation, heartbreak, crushing all at once. Yet beneath it, a quiet fire burned. They would not surrender their truth, even if the law demanded it. Outside, headlines celebrated justice. Authorities smiled, confident the city's anger had been sated. The villains thought they had won. But whispers began to spread. Doubt trickled through the cracks in the narrative. Public outrage, muted at first, started to grow. People began to question, to see beyond the spectacle. Injustice had won the battle, not the war. The boys may have been condemned in the eyes of the city, but the story, their story, was far from over. And one day, the truth would rise, relentless, undeniable. The courtroom emptied, leaving echoes of despair. Families carried broken boys home, hearts heavy with grief. Neighborhoods whispered in disbelief, some in shame, some in fear. Trauma settled like dust in every corner of their lives. School halls became gauntlets. Every glance, every whisper reminded them of what they had lost. Yet beneath the weight of heartbreak, resilience quietly grew. The boys leaned on each other, finding strength in shared pain. Neighborhood allies, friends, even strangers began to rally. Letters of support arrived. Voices of dissent rose in newspapers and on radio. The community began to knit a shield around them. Every day was a battle. Therapy, stigma, sleepless nights. But each struggle reinforced a singular truth. They had survived. Injustice had bruised them, but it had not destroyed them. Outside, the city remained divided. Some celebrated the verdict. Others questioned it, whispers turning to protests. Hope flickered alongside danger, fragile but undeniable. The boys learned that resistance could take many forms. Speaking truth, holding fast, refusing to disobey. Even in despair, they found purpose. Every small act of defiance chipped away at the lies surrounding them. The hero is down, but the story isn't over. The flames of resistance, once tiny, would grow. And one day, the world would see the truth. 5 ordinary boys, crushed by a corrupt system, had never been defeated. Bitter ending, tilde 150 words. The city moved on. The boys disappeared into anonymity, their voices silenced by fear and despair. Families struggled to heal, but wounds festered in quiet corners. Villains celebrated, confident in a victory they hadn't truly earned. Public outrage faded, replaced by apathy. The system remained unchallenged, unrepentant. And yet, in hidden spaces, the boy's memory lingered, a faint, powerless echo. Sometimes, truth dies in silence. What if it were you, or your child, wrongly accused? 5 boys lost their freedom, their innocence stolen by lies. The system failed them. The city believed monsters existed where children had played. We cannot stay silent. Share this story. Comment your outrage. Spread awareness. Question injustice wherever it hides. Because truth matters only if we fight for it together. History shows, justice survives only if ordinary people stand together. The fight isn't over, not for them, not for anyone who faces the weight of lies. Raise your voice. Make the world listen.